Hello and welcome to another video. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make bass music in the style of Forest Drive West, inspired by his tracks Impulse, Void Control, Parallel Space, and Creation Dub. The project file, samples, and presets are available for a small contribution in the description. And if you learned something from this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on the bell notifications. Our BPM is 170 and we're not in a specific key. If it wasn't for the notes of the chord pad, then we would be in E harmonic minor, but I didn't think too much about scales when I was making this project. First, we have the kicks group with some 808 style kicks. Within this group, we have two identical kick samples, with the second channel having an auto filter utilizing the LFO to sweep the frequencies around. This was inspired by Forest Drive West's approach in Void Control. Then we have the drums group. Starting with the breaks. We have this woo, which is taken from the think break. I've used heavy saturation, and this is something you'll see throughout this project, particularly with the drums. There's an EQ3, removing lows. Then we have serum effects with phaser and a long reverb, plus echo. Although this channel is in the breaks group, it's acting more like an effects hit. Then we have the aim and start. Again, we have saturation and serum effects, this time with just phaser. And then there's an EQ. Impulse was the inspiration for the processing here. Then we have the aim and effects, which has similar processing to the woo channel, although there's drum bus with damping. Then we have the aim and fill from bar 8. And this is similar in terms of effects to the aim and start, although we have a low pass filter sweeping the frequencies around. Finally, we have the break snare. And again, there's a saturator, and I'm using kilohertz transient shaper to increase the snare's attack and sustain. This plugin is free and I'll link it in the description. Then there's EQ and an auto filter with the built-in LFO sweeping the frequencies around. This was inspired by the snare in Void Control. On the breaks group, we have a utility monoing the bass below 500 Hz to ensure the breaks are mono compatible after all the phasers and reverbs. Next, we have the perks group. We have this perk loop, and here we have saturation, redux, and vinyl distortion. Then we have EQ and this audio effect track. In here, we have a bandpass filter with its frequencies being swept around using the built-in LFO. This is in parallel, and it's been turned down by 12 dB with the clean channel at 0 dB. In the end, the effect is fairly subtle. And finally, there's an echo. Then we have a rim shot. Here we have saturator, EQ, and echo. On the perks group, there's a filter, which you may have heard sweeping the frequencies down at bar 7. Then we have the high perks group. Starting with the hats. On the channel, we have saturation, drum bass with damping, although the drive's at 0, EQ 8, another sweeping bandpass auto filter, and phaser in Serum Effects. Next, we have the gyro, and this just has echo applied. Finally, we come to the drum effects. And firstly, we have the break noise. So this is noise layered over the aim and start. This is made in Serum. And we have the bright white noise. And then in the effects, we have hyperdimension, distortion, phaser, and EQ. Let's listen to what this adds in the mix. Next, we have the noise snare, which is layered with the break snare, but is sparser. On the channel, we have a modulated bandpass filter. So with the LFO moving around. And then the snare is sidechaining this compressor. Then we have the noise main. And again, this is sidechained by the snare. Like the saturation, these noise elements help add grit as well as ambience, both of which are characteristic of Forest Drive West's aesthetic. Finally, we have this pew. On the channel, we have Serum Effects with phaser, reverb, and EQ, and an echo. There's this perk conga accent groove in the groove pool, and it's applied to all the elements in the drums group to humanize these patterns. On the drums group, we have drum bus and parallel compression. And an EQ. Reverb is applied via Sende. For this project, I've tweaked the car garage preset from the hybrid reverb. Next, we have the basses. Here we have a separate sub and top for the growl bass, and they're playing identical MIDI patterns. Let's start with the sub. You could use MIDI controlled pitch bend or different notes utilizing slow glides. But here I've just used one note. In Serum, we have a sine wave taken down by 2 octaves with a low pass filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO1, which is on off mode, meaning it doesn't re-trigger when a new note is played. The filter has lots of drive and fat. In the effects, there's another filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO3. LFO2 is unused in this patch. On the channel, there's a compressor to ensure the bass is consistent, and EQ3, which is splitting the frequencies. I'll leave a video on the screen and in the description which explains this technique in more depth. Next, we have the top growl. This is an approximation of the growl heard in Impulse, and I'll try and outline how I believe Forest Drive West achieves this type of sound. Here we have the Monster 7 waveform taken down by 2 octaves with its unison at 7. Its wavetable position is being modulated by LFO2. And FM from B is activated, so this patch is using FM synthesis. Oscillator B is this subby saw waveform, taken down by an octave, with its unison also at 7. The level has been taken down, so we only get the effect of the FM synthesis. Aside from the rectified distortion and the phaser in the effects, every other parameter in the patch is the same as the sub. So these type of 2-stage LFO shapes give greater control when creating these types of complex articulations. Another key component of these growls is multi-band saturation, which is what this rack is for. Here I've split the frequencies using EQ3s and used Ableton's overdrive to create dirtier harmonics. There's also an echo on the highs. Then we have an EQA, which is sculpting the sound a little. Finally, we have the sub drop, which is an 808 that drops in pitch. On the basses group, we have parallel compression, EQA, and sidechaining via the kicks. Reverb is applied via A. Next, we have the effects. First, we have the bell impact. There's an echo on the channel, and the next 2 channels have the same effect. Then we have this monster reverse. These monster type sounds augment the main bass as more subtle articulations. Unlike many of the other sounds I've used, these were saturated before being brought into the project. Then we have the laser, again with echo. And finally, the alien effects. This is inspired by a sample heard in Void Control. On the channel, there's an auto filter. Again, we have the LFO sweeping the frequencies around, channel EQ, chorus, and echo. These effects recall Forest Drive West's hypnotic undulating style, with more of an emphasis on texture and rhythm than melody and harmony. On the effects group, we have glue compressor, in parallel, EQ, and reverb via A. Finally, we have the melodic group. First, we have the drone. I've used the Ableton granulator here, and these types of droning, probably granulated textures, are heard in Impulse and Parallel Space. Notice the granulator's slow attack, so the sound fades in. Next, we have the chord pad. As mentioned in the intro, I sort of jammed out this chord, so I wasn't thinking too much about scales. This is the same sample as the drone, again in granulator. But this time we have EQ, erosion, auto filter with the LFO active, serum effects with phaser, and an echo. Finally, we have the stabs. So these are E minor triads. In serum, we have a sine wave in oscillator A, and the noise oscillator is active, utilizing the microcorg noise. There's a low pass filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO2. In the effects, there's hyperdimension, distortion, and a format filter, creating a vocal-like quality. On the channel, there's drum bus with compression, EQA, erosion, isotope vinyl with warping, and echo. On the group, there's more parallel compression, EQ, and bass mono below 500 Hertz. Reverb is applied via A. You don't necessarily have to have quite this many melodic elements when making this style, but I often go for maximalist interpretations of artists when making these videos. So hopefully this should give you an idea of different approaches. As always, you can leave questions in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.